G'day everybody. As you can see by looking over my shoulder, we're at the Gold Coast, sitting up in a wonderful hotel room, having a bit of a relax prior to the first day of the last round of the Pertec Enduro Cup at the Gold Coast. One of my favourite circuits, the street circuit here on the Goldie. It's an awesome street circuit, and fortunately over the years I've had a bit of success. Last year wasn't so great with James. We were looking pretty good there for both races, but it didn't quite work out our way. So I'm here to do what you've already seen with, I think, GT and Warren Luff and Adrian Burgess has done, which was ask those guys some questions. So it's my turn. It's time for Ask Murph. So I've got some questions. We'll get into it. This is from Luke, and Luke has asked, who else would you like to pair up with other than the past combinations and JC? It's a pretty good question. I've been very fortunate. Over the period of my time in V8 Supercars, driving at the Enduros, driving at Bathurst. I've been really fortunate to pair up with some fantastic drivers, and you know, that's given me opportunities to be on the podium and win races as well, the combinations that I've been with. So I've you know, been really happy with all those people I've driven with. There's a few guys that I haven't had the chance to, that I probably, you know, would like to, maybe another Kiwi, being able to do that. We've done that. I did that with Jason Richards, which was phenomenal. But, you know, there's some other great Kiwi drivers out there as well that I probably haven't had the chance to. So Jason and I, you know, we had a couple of good results at Bathurst together. But, you know, the likes of Fabian, there's obviously Shane Van Gisbergen and now Scotty McLaughlin. You know, I would have been pretty cool to get the opportunity to drive with one of those guys as well. But as far as other drivers that are out there, you know, I've had the chance to drive with Craig Lowndes, and I've been with James now as well, and I haven't driven with GT. He would be a guy that I'd be keen to, but there's a bit of a height differential on there. But I can't really complain at all. Every guy that I've driven with over the years has been a top-notch guy and top-notch driver, and I've really enjoyed every co-driver I've had the opportunity to drive with. Next question. Guptill. Murph, do you still really enjoy racing as much now as what you did in your first race? I've got to say, you know, these days driving V8 Supercars, there's events that you go to, there's things that happen, and you know, you know, there's days that you just don't enjoy it as much. This year I've really enjoyed my racing. You know, working, as I say, with the Holden Racing team and working with James. We've got a great environment there. We've got great relationships with the engineers and the guys on the car, and I've enjoyed driving this year more than I've enjoyed driving a supercar in quite a long time. And it's all to do with that environment, all to do with the support you get from all the guys, the people you're working with, the equipment you've got. There's just so many things that come into it, and it's a hard game out there racing supercars. You know, it's a hard game being competitive, consistently being competitive, and it takes a lot of things to come together for the drivers to be able to perform at their absolute best. And you know, certainly this year I felt that I've had more of that opportunity. I'm more comfortable in the car this year than I was last year, and also, as I say, probably a bit more comfortable I've been in a supercar for quite a little while. So. You know, you have days that do just make you realise how much you love the sport, and then there's days where obviously things don't go your way and it's not as good. But at the moment, I really am enjoying driving a supercar, and the thrill and the reward I'm getting out of it is enormous at the moment. Next one, from Alexander. He asks, I noticed that you have changed your driving style from left foot braking back to right foot braking. Is it difficult to get used to? I started right foot braking just like everybody else, you know, doing the heel and toe. Put your foot on the brake and use the side of your foot to blip the throttle as you go down the gears. And many years ago, it was 1997, when I was at the Holden Racing team, we were doing some testing and required a really solid, steady brake pressure. And so I started using my left foot to do that, and wasn't really thinking about the gear changing at the time, just keeping that pressure using my left foot. And it was just something I started to get used to, and I quite liked the way it felt and the ability I had to change gears. It seemed to work and it flowed, and I just stuck with it. So it was quite difficult, you know, a couple of years ago after I recovered from my back surgery. it was quite difficult to go back and flip back to doing something that I, certainly in a V8 supercar, that I'd got so used to doing a different way. Most other cars I would right foot brake just like normal, but in a V8 supercar, with how hard you have to brake and how heavy the cars are, I got really used to using my left foot to do it. So it was a bit of a transitional period. Also, the other thing that sort of made me go back to doing that was the requirement to save fuel in a V8 supercar. We had, for a couple of years there, it was imperative to use as little fuel as possible in certain situations, and using your left foot to do it, you tend to use a fraction more fuel than what you do with your right foot. So it took a little bit to get used to it again, but I've transitioned back into it pretty easy, and I'm really used to it again. If I had to go back to left foot braking, I'd be able to do that probably quite easy. I still do it a little bit. At Bathurst the other week, I was using my left foot in some places just where we weren't having to change gear. I'd just bring my left foot over and just use that a little bit to slow the car down. So it's one of those things that a lot of guys can do both, but you need to work on one thing and do it as best you can. So focusing on one way is the best way to go about it. Next question. Ryan asks, what was the best car setup you have driven around Bathurst? He says, was it the Kmart racing days? He would like to know also, is there a certain point in a race that becomes higher pressure, or is it the first corner or the last lap? Best car setup, it's one of those things when back in 2003 with the Kmart racing team, it was just one of those weekends where where the car was just fantastic out the gate. The setup that we had on the car was just phenomenal. And it worked, and the car was easy to drive, it was very fast, and away we went. It wasn't really anything specifically we did, it was just that the car suited the track. The surface was new back in 2003. I was comfortable, Rick was comfortable, and it just worked. And there's days that happens. Often we're chasing setups to try and get to those points, and some days it works, some days it doesn't. So that was a really good example of just arriving at the track, pulling the car out, and it being fast out the gate. Most time you turn up there and you've got to work away at it and work hard at getting the setup just right so it's comfortable to drive. On that day, or that weekend, it just seemed everything seemed to gel, and it seemed to come together for the whole period of the weekend in practice and qualifying and in the shootout and in the race. So it was quite a unique kind of weekend. I don't think many people get to experience that because you're constantly trying to improve the car. So it was a good one. But there's been other days and other racetracks as well where I've had a car that's been just, felt like it couldn't be any better. It was at its absolute best. Now, the other part of that question is a certain point in a race that becomes higher pressure. Definitely the starts. No question about the starts being pretty high pressure because, depending on where you qualify, when you're at the front, you want to make sure you make the most of qualifying at the front. When you're at the back, you're looking to make the most of the first couple of laps when everyone's bunched up to try and gain as many positions as you possibly can. And when you're in the middle, you're trying to protect yourself from behind and also trying to move ahead in the front. So it is really high pressure. And the other part of it, is during a race when, maybe you're trying to hold someone out, or you're racing to try and pass someone for a better position, and it could be at the start, it could be the end of the race. So there's days where you're not under any pressure. You might be dominant, you might have the best car in the field and you're comfortable at the front and you don't feel any pressure at all. Other days, you might be fighting to maintain that lead or whatever. So it depends on the race, depends on the circumstance, depends on how good your car is at the time. So many different things, but if you can't withstand the pressure, then you shouldn't be sort of in the car doing that job. You need to learn to be able to withstand those situations at any time during a race, and sometimes it's harder than others. Vasilis asked, why do right foot brakers use the clutch when downshifting since it's not necessary? So another part of that whole left foot, right foot braking process, you tend to, when you use your right foot, you tend to use the clutch. Now, it's probably a bit of a feel thing. You don't actually have to, but it's timing. So when you put your foot on the brake pedal and you roll the side of your foot onto the throttle to blip it, it's just a timing thing. It seems much easier to be able to engage the clutch and put the gear through, and it gives you that, I suppose, a little bit of leeway with not matching those revs just perfectly, which is much easier when you use the left foot to brake. So when your left foot, you blip the throttle and you've got a real clean, obviously, touch of the throttle. When you right foot brake, you've got to do two things with your foot. One, you've got to obviously maintain a brake pressure, you've got to put brake pressure on, slow the car down, and then you've got to move your foot to blip the throttle. So it's a bit of a timing thing, and I suppose the clutch just gives you a little bit more of a window of operation there so that you don't actually end up getting the timing wrong and locking the rear wheels or doing something that's going to upset the balance of the car into a corner. So we use the clutch just to keep it nice and smooth and succinct through that gear change process. But it's a really good question. Right, so that's a few of the quick racing questions that I've gone through now. So for the next part of Ask Murph, we'll be looking at some more of the personal style questions.